Hello, and welcome to what is most likely the first lecture that you've listened to for Intro to Theater. Let's take a little bit of time to ask ourselves exactly what is theater? What are the things you have to create a theatrical event? The word theater comes from the ancient Greek word meaning seeing place. It was a place that they went to see a play. Interesting cocktail party trivia is that in Shakespeare's day, they would say, "Let's go hear a play," which says a whole lot about the difference between their culture and ours. They were primarily a literary culture, and we were very visual. So we today, again, say, "Let's go see a play." The word drama comes from the Greek word dran, which means to do. That will make a lot more sense when we look at what makes a play and what actors actually do. They do things, they don't just generate emotions, they play an action. So that makes sense. What is required for a theatrical event? When you go to a play, there are certain things that you almost always see. There's actors, there's a text, there's a set, there's costumes, there's furniture, there are the plastic elements, the things you can touch, furniture, props, there's lighting, there's all kinds of things that we almost always see. But let's try to get to the essence of what makes theater theater and how it differs from other activities that we engage in that share all these, that share many of the same features. Actors, text, do you have to have these things? Do you have to have an actor to make a theatrical event? Do you have to have a text? The text broadly considered, does it have to be something that one person wrote by themselves, handed to a director, and then they produced it with actors? Do you have to have a set? Do you have to have furniture on stage? Do you have to have walls? Do you have to have costumes? We're all wearing clothes usually most of the time. So you could argue that we're all wearing costumes. What we're trying to get at is the essence, what makes theater, not the things that we all have in our everyday lives anyway. You could argue that you're wearing a costume right now. You selected what you're wearing based on it was a specific choice you made. It wasn't arbitrary. That choice could be, oh, this looks really flattering on me and I want to look good today. Or it could simply be, this is what was clean. Either way, you made a choice. And that's what costume designers do. They make choices. That's what all designers, all artists do. The choice of furniture on stage, do we have to have these things? I don't know. Think about other human events that we engage in on a probably pretty darn regular basis that share these things. Does a sporting event have actors and an audience? Definitely. Do they have, we didn't talk about last time, but for last slide, to have a theatrical event, do you have to have a place for an actor and a performer? Maybe. Sporting events, they definitely have a place for the actor and the audience. They have costumes, so you know what team to root for. They have props that they need to do what they do. You could even argue that they have a text. You know the rules of the game, similar to maybe improv, same thing. Or I would also argue that it's similar to a scripted play in which there are goals and objectives and obstacles. How about a religious service? Do they have costumes? Definitely. The choir wears certain things. Is there a place for the actor and the audience? Is there an actor? Sure. You could argue that the priest or preacher or what have you is the actor and the audience is the congregation. Are there set pieces? Sure. There's the pulpit. There's, fill in the blank. How about a classroom setting? Arguably, the instructor is the actor, the students are the audience. There may be more interaction, but I've been to many theatrical events where the audience interacts directly with the performers. So, what is it that makes theater different from these other events? You can ask it that way. Or you can boil it down to what is essential in the theater. Fortunately, it's not David Hasselhoff. I just thought that was a really funny picture to put in here. But what is essential? What is the difference between all those other activities that engage the same functional elements but are not theater? I could extend this to dramatic media, but we'll talk about film and television in a minute. What's the difference between a sporting event and fill in the blank? There are many other activities you could put there. A music concert, what have you. The difference between those events and a theatrical event is artifice, pretense. When we go to a play, we are expecting the actors on stage to assume a personality, a character, if you want to call it that is not who they are in real life. We don't expect that from athletes. We don't expect it from preachers or ministers or priests. We don't expect it from musicians in a concert. Certainly they're behaving differently than they behave when they're not standing in front of a group of people, but we all do. They're not assuming an alternate character. The most important thing about artifice is not just that the actors are pretending to be other people, and I use that word with great reservation because that's a horrible word to use in terms of acting. If you're an actor, you're not pretending, you're acting. If you're pretending, that's probably bad acting. But the most interesting thing about artifice is not just that the actors are engaging their artifice, but that the audience is engaging their verisimilitude. $5 word of the day. Verisimilitude can mean a few different things. It can mean truth, but it means an artistic truth. It doesn't mean you could argue that all actors are lying in one way or the other, but it doesn't mean literally telling the truth. It means having an artistic truth. I really like the term suspension of disbelief. What does that mean? It's largely what the audience does. It is what the audience does. They engage in the production. They suspend their disbelief. They buy in to the illusion. They buy into the artifice that the theater company, the actors, the directors, the designers are trying to create. They turn off their BS monitor, if I can use that term. They don't look at the stage and think, oh, that's a girl in my English class. Oh, that's not an electrical light. That is, or opposite, they say, oh, that's not the sunrise. That's an electric light. No, we don't do that. We buy into it. We know that this is all illusion, and we engage in it. That's what makes the theater so wonderful, because we're all alive in the same space, in the same room, at the same time, engaging our verisimilitude together. Actors, the audience is giving the theater company the benefit of the doubt in buying into the illusion. They're playing along with the game. You don't really do that in any other of those activities that have the same elements that don't imply artifice. You could say film and television apply artifice, but film and television is very different from the theater. So, let's talk a little bit about the difference between theater and film. I like to think of the difference between theater and film and television. You can say film and television. Similar to the difference between poetry and a novel. So just think about that for a second. What does a novel give you? Novel gives you everything that you need to experience the story. A novelist will say, she walked into the room aggressively and was anticipating a confrontation. When he walked into the room and his hat nonchalantly fell off his head, the two of them locked eyes and realized that their destinies were sealed. Whatever. Plays don't give you that. They just give you a play is a blueprint for a production in which the actor has to, not only does the actor have to fill in the gaps that are there, but the audience has to fill in. When you see a play, they're not handing you everything that you get when you see a movie or on TV. You can plop a camera down in any setting and give any audience member all the quote reality that they can deal with. A play doesn't do that. Just like a novel gives you every word that you need to experience the story, a poem does not. A poem gives you images and texture, the use of language, and you are able to create your own reality based on that poem. That's kind of what the theater does too. No play, no production, I should say, no matter how much you spend on it, is ever going to be completely realistic, if only by virtue of the fact that it takes place in a theater. Now, you can argue that, sure, there are some theatrical events that don't take place in theaters, but 99.999% of the time you're in a theater, and an audience is sitting there watching you. That is not real. If you think it is, maybe you need therapy. Theater is immediate and illusory. Unlike film and television, you can watch the same movie over and over a billion times and it's never going to be different. Nor is television going to change. It's a recorded medium. Theater is illusory. Every time you see a show, it's going to be different. Now, perhaps you're seeing a Broadway musical and it's a matinee and the cast is on autopilot. Sure, arguably there's not going to be a whole lot of difference between, one matinee to the next. But there will be some differences, yet because it's live people up there, the audience performer feedback loop is very strong, and every performance is going to be different. That's kind of what makes it magical. Theater is almost always more of an event than film or television. When you going to the theater requires a lot more planning than it does to go see a movie, because you can go see the same movie for, many different times. Theater requires people to arrange to be there at a specific time, because the actors and the company also has to be there at that time. So it's more of an event. And it's intensely human because you are there, as I said, in the room, engaging with your fellow human beings in a way that a recorded image can never do. So this was our first sort of general introduction. Probably not a whole lot of earth-shattering news in this, but it's just an interesting way to look at what's required for the theater. So going back to that, what do you have to have for the theater? Do you have to have all these elements? I would argue that all you really need at the end of the day is an actor and an audience. There's a question, do you need an audience for it to be a theatrical event? Well, if you don't have an audience, it's probably not a performance, it's probably a rehearsal. Do you have to have text? No. I don't think any of these things would be a reach for you to think about and realize you probably don't actually have to have them. Now, of course, 90% of the time, you always do have these things. But the essence of theater is the actor and the text and verisimilitude. So, that's it for this first lecture. Have a good day.